Savor every last second of autumn with HelloFresh. HelloFresh delivers fresh, quality produce from the farm to your door in less than a week, allowing you to enjoy the most delicious flavors of the season from the comfort of your home. It really helps that they provide foolproof, step-by-step recipes that make it super easy and stress-free to cook delicious, healthy meals. Not to mention it cuts back on time spent in the kitchen, with meals being ready in half hour or less. We have enjoyed cooking and eating these delicious meals, especially the Southeast Asian-inspired chickpea curry, which was scrumptious. So go get yourself some quick, easy, and delicious meals using my link, or go to hellofresh.com and plug in my code POGHF7486 for 65% off, plus free shipping on your first box. But for now, it's time to get comfortable and let the darkness take control.
On the morning of my 7th birthday, my dad at age 39 had a heart attack that left him in a coma for 4 years before he passed away. During the first year of his hospitalization, my mum was going crazy and desperate. She was now raising 6 girls, all under the age of 18. She ended up hiring a spiritual person, basically a male witch. He claimed that we were cursed and could help get my dad better. I remember him doing some weird stuff around the house, and I pretty much ignored him. I was 7 and didn't care what was happening. Later that night, crap hit the fan. We lived out in the countryside, a big town in central California with no neighbors. All night, all of my sisters and mum woke up hearing loud screams and cries. It sounded like sheep and cats were getting slaughtered. When we went to the living room, we could hear footsteps like people running outside the door. So my mum called the cops. One of the cops turned on the TV to distract us while the other did their thing and spoke with my mum and older sisters. All of a sudden the TV went fully to static black and white, and we all saw a horned figure. The cop then turned it off fast. The cops left because there was nothing to be found, and to this day my sister and I still think about that night. We all ended up sleeping in the living room for days after that. I'm 28 years old now, and I've never experienced anything like that again.
One night when I was 15, I stayed over at my buddy's house. His parents were gone, and his older brother was looking after us. When we went to bed, the house was quiet and dark. I could barely see his bedroom door open slightly, and I assumed it was my buddy's brother checking in on us. But then I realized this person looking in on us was wearing glasses, and my friend's brother did not wear glasses. There was no one else in the house, and I could not figure out who this person was. I was frozen in fear, just staring at the figure looking in on us, when my buddy, who was in another bed on the other side of the room, began screaming at the top of his lungs. I had never heard a more terrifying sound, and my heart dropped out of my chest. The person looking at us quickly backed out, and the door was closed quietly. A few seconds later, we saw the light come on in the hallway, and my friend's brother flew open the door asking what was wrong. We both started yelling that someone was just there. The brother grabbed a baseball bat from his room and started searching the house. We checked the front and back doors and the garage, but they were all locked. All the windows were closed, and he looked in every closet and under the beds. Needless to say, we spent the rest of the night in his room. None of us could sleep, so we stayed up all night talking. It was one of the most terrifying but best nights of my life. I often had trouble sleeping as a child, and would wake up in the middle of the night to go to my parents' room to sleep. I was very paranoid and sensitive, and constantly thought there was someone at the foot of my bed or in the dark corners of the room. Well, one time, and I still swear this to this day, something or someone yanked my sheets off me one night and woke me up. I sat up and couldn't see anything, but needless to say, I didn't sleep that night. I spent the whole night looking around and waiting for them to do it again so that I could see them do it.
I was 8 or 9 at the time. I would have this happen often, where the sheets would get pulled off me, or at least that's how I experienced it. This went on for years. One time this happened, I crossed the hallway between my parents' bedroom and mine, and there was this bright, blinding light coming from outside the window. I still have that image stuck in my head, but I don't know what happened after I saw the light. I just remember seeing it. I once dated a man who claimed he was haunted by a demon or evil spirits. Weird stuff would happen around him, like he'd leave all the drawers and cabinet doors in his kitchen open. I'd come to his apartment and find all of them open and him in his bedroom. I'd ask him about it, and he'll say he didn't remember leaving them open. I thought he was just messing with me. Then I started to have nightmares when I'd stay over. Like I once dreamt a creature was hovering over him. It looked like a black sheet or a dementor. It was trying to smother him, and I screamed myself awake. Once, when we were sitting in the living room, he said he felt it nearby, and I heard a guttural growl sound. We were alone, and he didn't make the noise. I was so scared I told him we should stay in my apartment that night. He said it was tied to him and would just follow him around. When we got to my place, I told my roommate about the situation. She was open-minded about it, and we sat up talking for a while. At one point, he and I went and got into my bed to lie down. He told me he could feel it nearby. My skin started to get goosebumps, and I felt this overwhelming fear. We decided to go back into the living room with my roommate because it felt safer. While they were talking, I decided to go outside onto my patio for a smoke to calm myself a bit. I am actually not a superstitious person, so this was all getting to me. Plus, I hadn't been getting much sleep. While I sat outside, there was a lightning storm, but no rain yet. But I could feel the sky flicker and the winds start to blow back and forth in these big gusts, and I began to get angry. Like, how dare this thing come to my house? In my mind, I challenged the creature to appear. I dared it. I was calling out to it in my head. The storm was coming, and I decided to go back in. Feeling upset and angry, I put my cigarette out on a small glass ashtray that was on the patio. As I pulled the butt down, the ashtray split perfectly into 3 pieces. 3 perfect triangles. I know I didn't push hard enough to break it, and right then the thunder and lightning crashed really hard. I scooped up the broken ashtray pieces and ran back inside to show my boyfriend and roommate. I was so freaked out by everything at that point that I couldn't process it. The next day he called his aunt in Mexico, and she told him to get a small mirror and look into it while calling out to the spirit. She told him to break the mirror when he saw or felt the demon, and then bury the pieces where no one would find them. He did, and apparently there were no more problems after that. I don't know if this is all nonsense to this day, but I'll never forget how I felt the day the ashtray broke. It was like the bad spirit was taunting me. When I first moved in with my aunt when I was 16, I was home with my little cousin, who was 1 at the time, called Kyle. He fell asleep for his nap in his crib, so I decided to take my shower. Then I wouldn't have to be up later when everyone was home. About 15 minutes had passed by, and I just finished rinsing my hair, and Kyle woke up and began to cry. I went to get out of the shower and grabbed my towel when I heard a man's voice yell, "Shut up," very angrily. We lived in a house, so it couldn't have been my neighbor, and I know it wasn't my uncle because he was out of town for the week. It scared the crap out of me, but I ran out of the bathroom butt naked with a curling iron in my hand, ready to fight whoever was in the house. But I opened the bathroom door and looked into his room, and no one was there. Naturally, I grabbed the child, my robe, and my cell phone and ran across the street to my neighbor's house with Kyle crying hysterically. I'm panicking, and my neighbor, 80, was trying his damnedest to comfort us. We called the police and my aunt. Both rushed over. The cops checked the house and didn't find anyone. No signs of forced entry, nothing. Everything was still locked except the front door that I unlocked. Nothing broken, nothing stolen. And for the longest time, everyone thought I was crazy. I had a Furby when the craze was happening, and you could teach them to say a lot of things or play games. I was playing peekaboo with it. All it did was close its eyes and then say peekaboo, when it opened them for a few seconds later. It started to say something about it that made a distorted sound like the battery was dying. You know when an electronic is on fire in the movies and the audio sounds all messed up? Kind of like that. It closed its eyes and then no response for like 5 minutes. I messed around with it and thought perhaps the battery was dead. I got up to get my mum, and as soon as I touched the doorknob, the Furby laughed and said, "I got you." It scared the absolute crap out of me. It never did that again either. A lot of creepy stuff happened in the house that I grew up in. In 2011, I was a 9th grade transferee to a new school, and my classmates were telling me that this one kid from another section called Jack was a bit weird, and the two of them saw his reflection from a computer monitor in reverse. By reverse, I mean not how we normally see ourselves in the mirror. I thought they were just fooling around and making up stories. Until, after the 10th grade, I saw the same thing. Jack became my classmate and we became friends. He was a funny person and a joker in class. And one day, we were in the canteen, and I have this small pocket mirror that I took out to try and fix my hair. Jack sat beside me and I looked at him through the mirror, and I was creeped out because I saw his reflection in reverse. I didn't say a word to him because I was in shock. I looked at him again through my mirror, and a few minutes later his reflection became normal. I just let it go and didn't let it ruin our friendship. But whenever I think of the stuff I saw in 2012, it still gives me the creeps. Because I have no idea what sorcery or curse this is. Sadly, Jack passed away in 2020 due to a heart attack. He was a nice guy. When I was between 10 and 12 years old, I was afraid of dark and had trouble sleeping. I was always tired. Sometimes my mum came to my room at night just to check if I was asleep. Well, one night I was about to fall asleep when I saw my mum standing next to the window looking out. Except it wasn't my mum. She had short hair, and this someone else had long hair. I didn't see their face because it was dark, but when they turned around and looked at me, I felt horror I've never felt before. Not because they were somehow horrible, but because I felt a wave of kindness and worry from them. I suddenly knew they had always been watching. Being a kid, I hid under my blanket and waited, but nothing happened, and there was no one there when I finally pulled the covers back to check. Well, I thought I was hallucinating from being so tired and half asleep, but it happened again. And again. Always different people. They were just checking on me, not wishing anything bad, but one of them was a bit irritated because I could see them. They said, not out loud, I just knew in my head, that I shouldn't be staying in that room. They were like, "It's obviously not good for you to spend the night on this route." I changed rooms with my sister later. Not for that reason, I never told a soul. I was not a trusting kid and was pretty sure everyone would think I was crazy. I never came to that other room. I started to sleep better. Sometimes when I got up at night to have a glass of water, I felt this presence being like, "See, told you it wasn't the place for you." I swear that I'm a pretty serious person and don't believe in anything supernatural, but I don't have an explanation for this. I guess I was trying to sleep on some kind of pathway for spirits. They didn't bother my sister, or perhaps she just never shared this with anyone either. This happened a few months ago, and it's hard to talk about because it sounds so made up, but it's absolutely true. So let me get into the meat and potatoes. I live in an apartment with my husband and son. My husband works 5 p.m. to 5 a.m. shift, so I was alone with my infant son at night. I walked out of my room, and a small towel that was sitting on top of a basket on the laundry seemed to jump off the top of the pile onto the floor. I rationalized that as the swinging of the door opened it and it caught a breeze. Then I was playing with my son in his room and kept hearing stuff like the shuffling of plates or something in the kitchen. I go out and it stops, and there's nothing happening. I rationalized by saying, I'm in an apartment and it was probably someone else's stuff in their apartment, even though it was definitely close sounding, but I have to rationalize it. I put my son to bed and go into my room to chill. The door opens slightly. I really start thinking this is weird at this point, but what can I do? It was probably just the air kicking in, and the door wasn't completely closed. I keep trying to make sense of it, and after 40 minutes my son starts screaming. That isn't like him to just wake up screaming. I go in and it takes him 15 minutes to calm down. I'm sitting in his rocking chair facing his bedroom door. I'm already a little shaken over everything weird happening, but mostly concerned and calming my son down now. Then the TV turns on by its frickin' self in the living room. There is no rationalizing it at this point. Tears immediately start and I'm shaking. I am absolutely sure a demon is about to backwards crawl at me right now. I start figuring out what the absolute heck I'm supposed to do at almost midnight with my infant son. I didn't call my husband to come home because I think there's a ghost. I just stare with my eyes opened as much as possible, the tears pouring out. After a few minutes of unrelated fear, I was able to get my son into his bed and tiptoe out before cautiously checking everything in the living room. Nothing else was out of the ordinary besides the TV being on. I decided to leave it on for the night and literally said, I'm leaving the TV on for you, please don't scare me anymore, and went to bed and shut the door. Needless to say, I didn't sleep that night, but thankfully, nothing else happened. I hate baby monitors. I would always be in the house by myself in the morning when everyone has gone to work/daycare and I'm waiting for the school bus. The one for the baby was obviously always beside the crib, and the other one was always in a different place, which didn't help. I knew my parents are moving, but it made it way more creepy because it always happened to be near me. And we have quite a big house with several levels, so the chances of us always being in the same room weren't that slim. Anyway, there was a manual mobile above the crib that you literally had to spin with your hand, and the longer you'd spin it, the longer the song would play when you let it go. It played a cute little lullaby. However, for some reason, whenever I was by myself, the baby monitor, of course right beside me or near me, would play the lullaby from the mobile, but distorted and glitchy and slow, like the battery was draining, or literally music out of a scary movie. But when I checked the room, the mobile wouldn't be moving or making a sound, which is when I would wait for the bus outside. And the weirdest part is that at any other point it would play perfectly, and it happened quite often. It's not the scariest story, but it definitely made my heart drop every time I heard it like that. I had a dirt bike accident when I was around 10 years old. My little dirt bike maxed out at 60 miles an hour. I was racing some people in a warehouse parking lot and crashed headfirst into a parked Jeep door. The helmet cracked, that's how hard I hit. I remember being in the sky looking down on myself. I was literally watching everyone around me and my body laying on the ground. I'd never seen the parking lot from a helicopter or plane. I felt warm and okay. Someone was there with me, but he said to me, and I could feel it, "It's not your time to go. Get back down there." I'm crying typing it out because I still don't know what to make of it. I wasn't scared. I just don't know. Since I was a child, I have always felt the sensation of something watching me when I was asleep or awake, but only at night. I've never paid much attention to it because I always thought I was overthinking, so did my best to ignore it. Well, this changed. A few years ago, I was looking at my phone. It must have been approaching midnight, when suddenly I heard something walk in front of my bed near my closet. I automatically looked up, but there was nothing there. It was like the floorboards were playing a trick on me. Okay then, I tried to go back to sleep. The next few nights, I heard something in my closet. Not banging, but scratching the closet door. I got up, turned the light on, and opened the closet door to reveal nothing. There was nothing there. So I returned to my bed, trying not to overthink it. After those strange days of hearing odd noises, it stopped for a few months. Until one morning, I was walking to my bus stop with my brother and cousin. It was around 7 a.m. when I hear my name being called out loud. I thought it was my grandpa because it's the same voice, and I turned around ready to greet him, but there was no one there. So I asked my cousin and brother, "Hey, did you guys hear Grandpa call me?" They didn't hear anything. I was kind of shocked, because I could hear my name called out really well. It didn't feel right, but I ignored it and kept on walking. A few months ago, I was sitting alone in the front of my house at around 9 p.m. It was getting dark. I turned the light on, when suddenly I heard a loud scream in the forest a few kilometers from my house. I thought it was a fox, but it sounded different than a fox. It sounded more like a woman screaming. It was kind of creepy, but again, I didn't give it much mind. And then a few days ago, I had a really scary dream. I was walking up the stairs outside. We have stairs outside which lead us to the second part of our house where my brother and sister have their rooms. When I turned my head left, I saw something black with glowing red eyes, and it stared for a few seconds and then screamed as it attacked me. Then I woke up panting because I haven't had dreams like that since I was a kid. I don't believe my house is haunted because my father built and finished it in 2007, so technically we are the first owners. Since I was a kid, I always believed there was something other than humans, be it ghosts or demons or whatever. I don't really know what to say on the matter, but I feel like there's something sinister at work here. And for those wondering, I don't have sleep paralysis. I am in fact a very light sleeper. If anyone can help me figure out what the hell is going on, I would really appreciate it. When I was 20, I moved into my first big girl place. When I got the condo, the previous owner had left behind a gigantic, creepy mirror, a super heavy ornate framed one still hanging on the wall. I had a few things happen when the mirror was still in my home, like the hallway it was hanging in, becoming substantially colder than the rest of the house. The most obvious was when I had gone to bed one night and had left the door closed but not latched so that my cat could push it open when he needed to join me. I was just starting to nod off when I felt a weight being pushed down on my bed, as if something was climbing on. I assumed it was my cat, so I looked at my door, but it was still closed. Very creepy. I didn't connect it with the mirror and didn't think much of it until shortly after when my dad offered to take it to the dump for me because I didn't want it. I brought it to my parents' house and he was going to take it the next day. Later that night, my mum woke up in the middle of the night to pee, as she often does. This time when she woke up, she found their dog standing statue still, not making a sound, staring out of their bedroom door into the hallway. His posture was rigid. He was a very vocal dog and it was very unlike him. Mum got spooked and didn't go to sleep until the dog went back to normal. The next day she, the biggest realist I know, demanded my dad not lag on getting rid of that creepy mirror. About a week ago or so, my fiancé and I woke up at the same time in the middle of the night. having a red light on us which went away in seconds, never to be seen again. We live in the middle of nowhere, and there's no possibility of electronics or anything else to make the room red. But we do have a ghost that mimics our everyday sounds using objects that can only be recreated by touching it. Lots of knocking, but it doesn't happen often. Fast forward to tonight. We're relaxing and playing games, and a bright laser pointer light happens in the corner and then just goes away. All the curtains and blinds are closed for all this time, and there's no way anyone else could mess or prank us. I've heard some cryptid stories and about the significance of the color red, and I just wonder if anyone has any advice or knows what this could actually be about. When I was 7 or 8, I had this Barbie head thing that was meant for me to do its hair and makeup and stuff. I sat on one of my dressers near the closet, and I had it facing away from me, and I was low-key creeped out by it. One night I hear heavy footsteps and assume it's my mum checking on me being asleep. I then start to hear heavy breathing, definitely not my mum. I open my eyes, and the doll was in my face. The doll eyes are just staring at me. I close them and then turn away pretending to be asleep. I heard heavy footsteps shortly after, and I was absolutely scared out of my mind. I finally fell asleep, and when I woke up, the Barbie head was facing towards me. The next day I put it in the garage cause nope, and a few weeks later it ended up back on the same location it was before. I asked my parents if they put it back in my room and they said they hadn't, and they had no idea how it was in the garage. I then locked it in an old dog cage and it stayed there till we moved out, and then I threw it away. You may be thinking, you were little, you could have been dreaming it. No way, I'm a light sleeper. I wake up to the slightest noise. It was definitely put there, and I was definitely awake when I saw it. The only part is, I can't tell you how nor why it happened. This happened when I was at someone's house and was tasked with going up to fetch something from the attic. The attic door slid down and out came the ladder. I began ascending with the mission of finding some adapters, technically some old VGA port adapters that he owned. There were tons of stuff in the attic, but one thing that really stood out was an old doll. I didn't touch it, and this goddamn thing starts laughing in the worst mechanical way. It had some batteries that were obviously leaking, which made the whole thing far more creepy. Oh, and if I moved, her head followed me in that direction. The thing didn't start in years, but for some reason, on that day, the moment I was in its proximity, it decided it would be the perfect opportunity to give me a mini heart attack. Needless to say, I was very reluctant to ever go up into the attic again after this creepy encounter. I'm unsure if it's paranormal or just due to very poorly timed coincidences. The first experience happened in my group of guys. I can't even remember the exact year anymore, but it was sometime when I was between 12 and 14. We were still hanging out in the same village. We sometimes fell into my room on the second floor, where we played PSP or watched a movie. And so we finished playing, went down the first floor and went outside. When my friend said that she had forgotten something on the second floor, in my opinion it was charging the PSP, but not the point, I went upstairs and didn't turn the light on, just took what my friend had forgotten from the table, and then I felt someone touching my back very gently. The adrenaline kicked in instantly, and I ran outside to the others and was sure that my friend had played a joke on me. I attacked him with an accusation, but everyone just looked at me in surprise and said that he had been with them the whole time. I logically thought the noise insulation of the house is bad, and the stairs are very creaky, and even more so, I would definitely have time to see and hear him running back. We agreed that it seemed perfect to me, and went on walking. But when I was locking the gates of my precinct, the guys told me to stop, and started shining a flashlight on my back. They took a photo, which I can't find anymore, and in the photo there was a huge hand, like the touch of Uruk-hai from Lord of the Rings, as if someone had applied it with flour or chalk. The only thing is, none of us have hands that big. After that, I slept with an axe next to my bed for 2 months. This happened around 21 years ago at my house in Lawrenceville. I'm upstairs on my computer, on America Online, or AOL for short, chatting with a friend of mine. My husband and daughter are in their respective rooms fast asleep. That's when I heard the front door open and close. The front door is at the base of the stairs, and I'm in the bedroom at the top of the stairs to the right, which is why I heard the door clearly. It's 11 p.m. No one should be coming in or out of the house. I feel my hackles raise and my heart starts racing. I'm scared out of my mind. I can feel the presence slowly coming up the stairs. I mention this frantically in the chat that I'm having with my friend. The phone then rings, and it's him calling me. He tells me to repeat what he says, and then do so forcibly and loudly. It was the Lord's Prayer. I said it around 3 times, and I could feel the presence was right near the top of the stairs and about 5 feet from the room. As I said the prayer, I could feel it moving back down the stairs, and then I heard the front door open and close. I cried and sobbed on the phone with my friend. I think a demon had just been in my house, and I didn't know what it was going to do to me or my family, but I was thinking the worst. I set the phone down, with him still in it, in case something happened to me. And as I turned on the hall lights and went down the stairs to lock the front door, it was locked. I turned all the lights on downstairs inside and out, went back upstairs to tell my friend all was good and hung up the phone, then awoke my husband, as he was in the midst of a nightmare. He couldn't explain it, just that something was scaring him. He's never, to that day or since, had a scary nightmare. I checked in on my daughter and they were both crying in their sleep. I'm convinced they could sense something was going on or just couldn't wake up. We're good now, moved out of that house into a house we built. Eventually had the new/current house blessed with holy water due to some stuff going down, but it's been calm for over a decade now, thankfully. It was November of 2020, and I was lucky enough to celebrate my 21st birthday in Vegas. I was so excited to party in Vegas, but the best part of the trip was that my godparents got me tickets to visit Zach Bagans' Haunted Museum. While other kids were busy watching Disney Channel and Nickelodeon, I would curl up with my blanket snacks, turn off the lights, and watch the new episode of Ghost Adventures. Needless to say, I am one of their biggest fans. Before you take the tour, you must take an oath, sign a waiver, basically saying that if anything happens to you while you take the tour, they're legally not responsible. And one of the many things that is listed on the waiver is that something could possibly follow you out of the museum. And I think that happened. One of the exhibits is a mirror that had reportedly witnessed a brutal murder. The mirror is always covered, and guests can say hi if they'd like into the mirror. Guests who have looked into the mirror have reported seeing shadowy figures behind or next to them. I didn't see anything. It was weeks after I got home from the museum, and I was home alone. I was sitting on my bed working on some homework on my laptop, when suddenly I see something in my peripheral vision. I look over and notice it came from the direction of my mirror. In my room, there's an oval mirror with a golden trim hanging on my wall. I've had this mirror ever since I was little, and nothing weird has ever happened to it before, until I visited the museum. I just ignored it and went back to doing homework. However, a few minutes later, I see something in my peripheral vision again. I looked back to the mirror, but nothing was there. This continues, only in my mirror for a month. I would never see it completely in my vision. I would only see it in my peripheral vision, and after the first month, it started to appear in all the mirrors of the house, and sometimes any reflected surface. And like before, it would only appear in my peripheral. It didn't take long for my parents to notice things either. They also said they only see it in their peripherals too. Whatever this thing is, it seems to really only stay in mirrors, so I eventually got used to seeing it. It lasted about a year and a half until a few months ago, I thought it eventually left, but boy was I wrong. I was up late one night watching YouTube videos and it was completely dark in my room except for the faint light coming from my laptop screen. And like it happened before, I see something in my peripheral vision. By this time, what had happened had sort of slipped my mind, so I ignored it and returned to watching YouTube. A few minutes passed and it happened again. This time I turn on my lamp, look back at the screen, and wait to see if I was just imagining things. Then of course it happens again, and the memories from over a year ago start coming back to me. However, this time, when I saw it in my peripheral, it wasn't in the mirror, it was in my bloody closet. There's no door in the closet, it's been that way for many years and I've never seen anything. There's a top shelf, and I have it stuffed with boxes. At first I thought it was the boxes, but then I realized the boxes were white, and whatever I was seeing was completely dark as shadow. Now, as I'm sharing this, it's 3:08 AM, and I've already seen this thing a few times tonight. I don't know if I should record my closet or what. All that I know is that I'm terrified, and don't know what I should do. I've had a number of paranormal things happen to me, and I'd like to share them with you now. My grandma's ghost visits to announce her death. My memories of this are a bit fuzzy, but I was only 4. I was playing in the backyard with my second cousin while my mum watched us. Suddenly she looked alarmed, saying something like, "Kids, stay here, someone's in the house." I remember that this scared me. Of course we didn't listen and we followed my mum into the house. No one there. But there was some noise upstairs, so we rushed. By the time we get there, we see a hanged picture get thrown to the floor and see glass shatter everywhere. My mum was very confused and said that she'd just seen my grandma in the window. That night, we got the call confirming that she had just died. My scariest encounter by far was when I was 9 or 10 at the time. My friend Mike invited me to his place, and we were just chatting with a girl on MSN until I saw something from the corner of my eye. There was a black translucid arm going through the wall. I was too shaken to say anything. My friend, someone on Face, just said, "Oh, you see the arm too?" Apparently he'd been seeing stuff like that a lot. To this day I can't explain it rationally. On another occasion I came back to my dorm room from the store. It was during the winter, and I put my coat and gloves on the bed. I opened my closet to put my things away, only to see one of my gloves is missing. I thoroughly searched my tiny room, but nowhere could it be found, until from the corner of my eye I see something black flash by. And here was the lost glove, exactly where it originally was. This next one may be a coincidence. I knew my grandpa had been in the hospital for a while and he was not doing so well. I saw him in a dream and he kept it short as he said, "I'm going to die now." And that was indeed the day he left the world. On another occasion, I was working outside all by myself in a remote swamp area surrounded by fields. I definitely felt something hit me in the back of the head hard. My first thought was that someone had arrived and thrown something at me like an apple or a baseball bat. But there was no one around and nothing on the ground. If a bird had hit me or flew away, surely I would have heard and felt this additional stuff, but no. This was quite a few years ago. We lived in a house that's only about 10 minutes away from where we live now. I'm 15 now, but was probably around 5 at the time. Now every time before my dad came home from work, my grandpa would tell me to go up into his room so that I'd be asleep before he came back. What I always did instead was run upstairs the instant I heard him come home, so that I would simultaneously stay up as much as possible and at least pretend to be asleep once he himself had come up. So that's what I did every time. However, there was one time where she told me to go upstairs before my dad came home, and I actually did. I got into bed and went to sleep. I was woken up at some point late and saw a completely dark figure at the foot of the bed. No distinguishable features whatsoever, just a solid black figure, as if it was a shadow or something. Then I remember that it spoke to me in a high voice, but I can't remember what it said. I believe I myself spoke to it, but I can't remember that either. I ended up going to sleep, and when I woke up I went downstairs and asked my grandma why she had been in my dad's room the night before. I assumed it was her because of the high voice, though my grandma's voice isn't really that high at all. Her response was simply that she had not been so. I then told my dad and grandma what happened, and my dad said that it might have been him and my tiredness messed with my perception. At the time I believed him, but I had no idea how my perception could have been messed with that badly. I've since told this story to quite a few people, including my dad and my grandma, years later. The things I've heard as a response is that it could have been a dream or sleep paralysis. The thing is though, I've had a lot of nightmares around this time. Despite being as young as I was always able to tell the difference. My dreams have never been so realistic to the point they felt real. The sleep paralysis theory sounds compelling, but I do not have a history of it, nor have I had it since. The one thing my dad said to me when I retold him this story recently is, "I didn't mean to frighten you, but the house was over 150 years old." I'd like to say that I do not believe in ghosts nor the supernatural, and I am a pure skeptic when it comes to things like this, and I would not blame you at all if you don't believe a single word I just said. But I want you to know that I don't believe this was a ghost. I think it was something else. I just don't know what that is exactly. I have never considered myself a believer in the supernatural, but in recent months I have been having some strange experiences. They're difficult for me to explain. Perhaps I should start at the beginning. I was in a relationship with a beautiful young woman called Vanessa. We were very close, and I truly thought she would be the one. Then 6 years ago, she was killed in a car accident by a drunk driver. Her death devastated me to the core, and for the next few years I completely shut down emotionally, especially around the opposite sex. Eventually I met another young woman called Jennifer. We seemed to hit it off quite well, and she helped me climb out of my self-imposed shell and open up once again. In time, I fell in love with her and wanted to take the next steps, but I was still haunted by the loss of Vanessa, and feared that I would lose Jennifer as well. One night I had a dream about Vanessa. In the dream we were sitting down on my living room couch, just talking. It all seemed so real. "I miss you so much," I said. "I know I've missed you too. Life hasn't been the same without you. I'm finding it really hard to move on." "Have you found another woman?" "Not sure I want to talk about it." "You have found someone, haven't you?" She didn't sound upset, just curious. I sighed in defeat. "Yeah, you could say that. There's no question I've fallen for her, but what? I don't want to betray your memory," I said while barely holding back tears. She held my hand and smiled. "My time in that world is over. Although I cherished our time together, I don't want you to remain in grief and agony forever. Not even for me. She'll make you happy. Don't be afraid to start over." I opened my mouth to say more, but that's when I woke up, and I spent the next day or so pondering what I had gone over with myself in my subconscious. Perhaps it was time to start over. I confessed my feelings to Jennifer, and much to my delight she reciprocated. Eventually we married, and I had fathered twin boys. That's when things began to get weird. It happened one night when my twins were 2. I was in the living room playing with them after a long day at work, while Jennifer, who was an excellent cook, was in the kitchen fixing our favorite dish. It started out normal enough, like any other night. Then I could have sworn I heard a voice say, "Alarm, malfunction." I looked up to the sound of the voice and said, Did you say something, honey? No. I could have sworn I heard something. I didn't hear anything. I shrugged it off and went back to entertaining my sons. Then I heard it again. Alarm. Malfunction. There it goes again. What was that, sweetie? You didn't hear it. It said alarm malfunction. I haven't heard a thing, dear. An awkward silence ensued. Then the voice came again. Alarm. Malfunction. For reasons I can't explain, I somehow felt compelled to obey the voice. I got up from the living room and walked towards our burglar alarm in the hallway, and lo and behold, the machine was indeed malfunctioning. Fortunately, I'm a decent mechanic and was able to fix it within a few minutes. Then I had a pleasant dinner with Jennifer and the boys. That night, we woke up to the sound of an alarm blaring. Someone had broken into the house. Whoever it was, they were not deterred by the burglar alarm because we could hear them roaming downstairs. My wife and sons hid in our bathroom while I pulled my 12-gauge shotgun from the closet. I opened the bedroom door, saw the man dressed in black ascend the staircase. I pumped the shotgun and stopped him dead in his tracks. He remained frozen in place until the police arrived to arrest him. Jennifer and the twins would spend the rest of the night at the nearby hotel, but I stayed home to gather my thoughts. My mind wandered back to the strange voice. Who was it? Where was it coming from? But I was less worried about that than the fact that I was hearing voices at all. After all, only crazy people hear voices, right? Then again, it did save my life as well as my family's, but that's just a coincidence. 2 months later, I had forgotten about the whole thing. I was scheduled for a job interview with a large technical firm, and I was very excited about it because this new job would help me support my family better. I was driving to the company's main building downtown, humming my favorite song to myself to pass the time. Then the voice returned. Don't go in there. It sounded like a forceful whisper. I turned around and looked in the back seat to see if anyone had somehow snuck into my car, but there wasn't. I arrived at the building, got my briefcase out my car, and as I approached the building, the voice spoke again. Don't go in there. I stopped in the middle of the parking lot. As before, I felt compelled to listen to what the voice was telling me. I tried to ignore it. As soon as I took one step closer, don't go in. The voice was louder and more insistent. I stood there for several minutes before finally throwing my hands up in frustration. I turned around and walked away from the building and headed towards a bar 2 blocks away. I felt like I badly needed a drink. Before I could take a sip from my scotch, I heard a very loud explosion. I rushed out of the bar and saw something truly horrifying. The top floor of the building where my interview had been scheduled was on fire. It was burning furiously, and people were running in the streets and screaming. Jennifer tightly embraced me when I returned home, relieved I wasn't hurt, but alas for me, my mind was all over the place. That night I couldn't sleep. I was thinking about the strange, disembodied female voice that I'd heard today, and that one night 2 months ago. I was beginning to fear that I was losing my sanity. Suddenly it occurred to me exactly who it sounded like, Vanessa, but she'd been dead 6 years. I was going crazy. Feeling a need to clear my head, I got up out of bed and went for a late-night drive. I hadn't been driving for 5 minutes before the voice reappeared. Danger ahead. I ignored it and pressed forward as I approached an intersection. There didn't appear to be any other cars on the streets tonight. Danger ahead. I began to drive faster. Again. Danger ahead. I entered the intersection and heard a loud crash. The next thing I knew, my car was flipping over and all I could hear was the sound of broken glass and twisted metal. My next memory was of some strange empty void. Although my vision was blurry, I couldn't really make out what it was. The voice spoke once more, but in a calmer and more reassuring tone. It's not your time yet. Your family needs you. Farewell. I love you. A bright flash of light and I woke up in a hospital bed surrounded by friends and family. If you're having a hard time believing this story, I don't blame you. I understand that these accounts sound like the ramblings of a madman, but I can't ignore everything that happened. Remember the dream I mentioned earlier? Was it really a dream? Or a message from beyond? Am I going insane? Or is my dead girlfriend watching over me from beyond the grave? Hey guys, it's Mort here, and thank you so much for listening. I do hope that you enjoyed tonight's video. If of course you did, be sure to let me know down below. It is always very much appreciated, so thank you all for watching to the very end. If you did enjoy tonight's video, be sure to leave a like, drop a comment, and if you're new here and you've made it to the end, you should be subscribed, guy. So go ahead and press the subscribe button. To hopefully see you next time for even more scary stories. Don't forget about our app where you can get literally thousands of scary stories just at the click of one button. And it's got sound effects and all kinds of cool stuff. But I think I'm going to leave things here for now. Until then, stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next one.